Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a really interesting dinosaur, Asylosaurus yelensis.
Yes, from the late Triassic in England.
We've got some details from the original paper and, a good summary to work from.
And the goal is sort of figuring out what makes this one stand out, right? Its whole story.
Exactly. And why its discovery and how it was saved is kind of noteworthy.
Well, the name itself is a great starting point, Asylosaurus.
Meaning,
It translates to unharmed lizard, or maybe better, sanctuary lizard.
okay, sanctuary lizard. That definitely needs some explanation.
It does. Peter Galton named it back in 2007. And the species name, yelensis. That's a nod to Yale University.
Right, so let's connect the dots. The actual fossils, they were found much earlier.
Oh, way earlier. Autumn 1834 in the Avon Fissure Fill in England.
But they weren't called Asylosaurus then.
No. Initially, Riley and Stutchbury described them in 1836. They thought they belonged to Dinosaurs.
Oh, okay. A different dinosaur altogether, at least initially.
Exactly. But then, here's the crucial part involving Yale.
This is the Othniel-Charles Marsh connection.
Precisely. Marsh, the famous paleontologist, he acquired these specific bones and took them to Yale, sometime between 1888 and 1890.
And this move turned out to be incredibly fortunate.
Hugely fortunate, because the original holotype specimen of Thechodontosaurus, the main example back in England,
What happened to it?
it was destroyed, completely destroyed in a bombing raid in Bristol during World War II, 1940.
Wow. So these bones being at Yale?
They were safe, in a sanctuary, you could say, hence the name Galton gave it decades later.
That is quite a story, just baked into the name.
It really is. These bones came from a Ration-age cave fill, Dirtham Down near Bristol.
So where does it fit in the grand scheme, classification-wise?
Okay, so it's definitely a dinosaur. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, clade Dinosauria.
The usual start.
Right. Then it fits within Saurischia, the lizard-hip dinosaurs, and more specifically, it's a sauropodomorph.
Meaning related to the long neck.
Exactly. It's considered a basal sauropodomorph, sort of an early cousin or ancestor on that line. Not one of the giants itself, but on that path.
Gotcha. And what do we know about what it actually looked like based on these rescued bones?
Well, the main specimen, YPM 2195, it's a partial torso. So we have back vertebrae, ribs, gastralia too, those are belly ribs, plus parts of the shoulder girdle, the upper arm bones, and bits of the forearm and hand.
Okay, so a decent chunk of the upper body.
Yeah, and there are some other referred bones, bits from the neck, tail, pelvis, arm, leg. Possibly from the same individual, possibly not. It's hard to be certain with fissure fills.
And based on all that, how big are we talking?
Gregory S. Paul, he put an estimate on it. Around 2 meters long, that's about 6.5 feet.
Okay.
And maybe weighing about 250 kilograms, so roughly 550 pounds.
So not tiny, but definitely not enormous like its later relatives.
No, quite modest, really, for a dinosaur.
Now, what sets it apart? You mentioned it was initially confused with the Catodontosaurus. Were there others around?
Yes, contemporaries like the Cabodontosaurus and another one called Pantidraco, they were sort of similar builds, these early sauropodomorphs.
But Asylosaurus had something different.
The key thing seems to be the humerus, the upper arm bone.
How so?
Its structure is distinct. Different shape, different muscle attachment points probably compared to the other two.
Interesting. Just the arm bone.
That's the main feature highlighted, yeah. It doesn't sound like much, maybe, but these small anatomical differences can mean a lot.
Like what? What could a different arm structure imply?
Well, it could hint at slightly different ways of moving, maybe different ways of feeding or using the forelimbs, perhaps a different ecological niche.
So even these early relatives were already starting to specialize.
It seems like it. Maybe Asylosaurus had a slightly different diet, perhaps more herbivorous or omnivorous in a different way than its neighbors. This difference in the arm might reflect that.
It gives you a peek into that early diversification.
Absolutely. How these animals were starting to carve out their own ways of living even when they looked quite similar overall.
Okay, so let's recap the key points. Asylosaurus yelensis,
The sanctuary lizard from Yale.
named for its incredible survival story, escaping destruction thanks to Marsh moving it across the Atlantic,
A basal sauropodomorph about 2 meters long.
living in late Triassic England.
And distinguished from its close relatives mainly by the unique structure of its humerus, its upper arm bone.
Which might suggest, a slightly different lifestyle or niche.
Exactly. It's a fantastic example of how history, chance, and anatomy all weave together in paleontology.
It really underscores how much we depend on preservation luck.
And how even partial finds, like these bones saved at Yale, can tell us so much about the early evolution of major groups like the sauropodomorphs.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other stories like this, maybe even more significant discoveries, were just lost? Lost to time or war or just bad luck?
It's a sobering thought.
And it shows how vital it is to study every fragment we find, because each one might hold a clue to understanding the bigger picture of life's history. Thanks for exploring this one with us.